All right, we now welcome on Kevin Stewart. He's the co-host of the Crown Score podcast, along with John Ellis and Reggie Walker. Kevin, how we doing?
Good, Carter. How are you?
Great. So, tell people about the podcast.
It's we just taped our fourth episode about a half hour ago. Actually, it's something I just came up with. I've known Reggie for 15 years. I've known John for 3 years just through Twitter. We've never met in person, but I put out a feeler on Twitter. I want to say about 5 weeks ago, just to see, just to get going. I need an outlet to talk sports. That's just something that I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they both replied that they were interested. So we said, let's. And I thought to myself, well, I guess maybe we'll make it a 3-person podcast because I thought it was just be me and somebody else, but we had like an initial Zoom call between the three of us, and everything just clicked. It's like we knew each other for so long. So we tape it weekly. It's about Charlotte sports. We enjoy doing it. We don't think we have many listeners yet, but we hope to grow an audience and hope that people tune in.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. Y'all definitely have a unique chemistry together, which is kind of weird that y'all have never been together.
Yeah, I mean, Reggie and I mean, we've been together many times, but the three of us never been together once. And we had that first conversation, and it was like, wow, this actually might work.
Yeah, because I interviewed John actually before, and he's a special interview.
He's great.
In episode 2, when y'all didn't have John, there was definitely something a little off. I don't know what it was, but he brings that something.
Yeah, it didn't feel right. I mean, Reggie and I could talk forever, but the three of us is what the show is, and is what it should be going forward.
So, all right, let's get into the Charlotte Hornets. How fun has this season been?
This season's been so fun. I mean, I've been in this city for 4 years now. And, when I first got here, it was nice to see Kevin Walker play. But there wasn't really like an energy in the building when you went to the game. But I think LaMelo Ball's been the best player in the draft. I think Gordon Hayward's been a great signing, and I was an advocate for where they brought him in. They said, they're paying too much money, but you have to overpay.
I was always against the Gordon Hayward contract.
Because I think you have to overpay to get a guy in Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte's not a destination city in the NBA. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been for quite some time. And I think he's worked. I think Terry Rozier has been fantastic. Malik Monk, now that they let him play, he's become alive. I mean, he had that huge night in Sacramento with that game winner. It's been a fun team to watch. I really enjoy Miles Bridges. I think he might be my favorite player in the team because he's become such a complete player, not just a dunker, but he hits his threes, he hits his mid-range jumpers. He doesn't miss from the free throw line anymore. I think the team it's been really fun to watch, and I'm glad that people actually be able to see him in person coming soon.
Yeah, so that was my next question. Roy Cooper's allowing 15% fans at games. How much is that going to impact this team?
I mean, I hope it does. I mean, I hope the crowds, 15%, it's not a lot, but when I went to games when I first got here, that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
But I hope that people are excited to see this team because on social media, it seems like there's a lot more interest than there used to be. Going back for a few years. I think having a little energy in the stands, I mean, I think it's going to help everybody. Not just the Hornets. I think it's going to help all teams. I mean, you've seen players say it. It's weird playing in empty stadiums, and I can't imagine what that's like. But I hope it gives them an energy boost, and I hope it gives them a little bit of a boost forward as that playoff run approaches. I mean, the trade deadline's coming, the playoff push is coming, and I think just having people in the stands will just boost the mojo of the team.
Yeah. So I was actually at the Jazz Hornets game out here in Utah. And you could see a difference in these guys, how excited they were to play. And I think that'll make a huge difference. Even the games where they have had fans like Phoenix, Orlando, you've seen a big difference with this team.
What was it like seeing a game in person with limited capacity?
Utah was actually kind of dead. I think it was just because it's Hornets or whatever. But Utah fans live up to the hype of being the most outrageous fans. So I'll tell a story. So we're sitting there. I was about 10 rows up from the court. There's about 10 people behind us. Gordon Hayward went down. I think he hurt his hand or something. We couldn't tell. Yeah. We were far away. And everybody in the stands was just like, I hope you break your shin. I hope you break your ankle. Kind of like how, remember when the finals, when Kevin Durant went down against the Raptors?
Yeah.
And everyone was cheering. It was almost like that.
Were you in Utah or were you in Philadelphia?
Exactly.
Yeah,
No,
that's terrible.
That's Utah, man. Vernon Maxwell says it best. Utah fans are crazy.
I've heard stories, but that's rooting for an injury. I mean, come on, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. But I think bringing back these fans will bring that buzz back in the building. For so many years, I've been to Hornets games for the last, I don't know, 12 years or so, and they are just dead.
Yeah, it was dead. It was kind of because listen, I'm spoiled. I grew up in New York, so I go to games in Madison Square Garden my whole life, where the Knicks would be awful. I mean, the Knicks have been awful for forever, but the buzz in that building is still. I mean, they still sell out. It's still insane. So when I came to Charlotte and I saw the game there, it's like, oh, this is a very different experience. So I hope that the fans will pack that 15% capacity and let that team know that they're there for them.
So, what move do the Hornets need to make to solidify a playoff spot?
Well, that's a good question. They're such a small team.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big man would be like a big center would really impact the team. I mean, because I don't know how much you're getting from Biyombo when Zeller's out. I mean,
oh gosh, don't get me started.
It's I like to see him do well, but he really hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and Reggie said it on our podcast, he thinks they should go out and get Andre Drummond, which I don't know how much that would cost them, but I mean, I don't know who the player would be, but I think, a big man would be a big help for this team.
Let me toss a couple names. We'll start with Drummond. How do you feel?
I don't know enough about him, but I think, would he start over Cody Zeller?
Yes.
Then I think
we'd have to. Yeah, it depends how the buyout would work or whether he's getting bought out or trade.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to go out and get a guy like him, I think you're probably going to sacrifice some of your backcourt, and I think Devontae would probably be the first name that comes to mind. Unfortunately, I mean, it was really nice to see him come alive last year, but I mean, the rookie LaMelo, he's just.
And Terry stepped up big too.
Terry stepped up, and Malik's playing well lately. So if you're going to get a guy like Drummond, I would think Devontae would probably be one of the first names that comes to mind.
How do you feel about Marvin Bagley?
I think the Kings. Let me start that over. I think the Kings.
Because I feel like that one's realistic.
That one is realistic, but I think they regret that pick.
Yeah,
having Luka Doncic go after him. But Marvin Bagley, what is he in his second or third year?
He is in his third year.
So, listen, I don't know how much it would cost to get these guys, but I think Marvin Bagley would be a huge improvement over having Biyombo back there.
Let's not pretend about the trade. Let's just say, would they be a good fit?
I think, of course.
John Collins.
I don't know enough about him.
That's fair. I think he's a little undersized for us too. But do you see the Hornets making the playoffs with their current roster?
I do.
The play-in or the playoff?
The play-in, definitely. The playoff, I would say it's about 75% for me, because the East is so close together in the standings that I think that a playoff spot is very feasible for this team. I mean, you have a couple more wins, you could be fifth seed in the conference. So playoffs, I think they have a very legit possibility, because this team plays hard. This team plays hard every night.
Yeah, and that's all a testament to Coach Borrego.
100%.
So, all right, that's good to hear. I love the Hornets. I hope they make the playoffs, but I'm an
eternal optimist. So
I'm pessimistic about the Hornets.
So I think, I understandably so, but I think that they have a very legit chance of making the playoffs.
So let's switch to the Carolina Panthers. I mentioned this before we started. It's a crapshoot question, but week 1, who do you see the starting quarterback of the Carolina Panthers being?
I think it's going to be Teddy. I hope it's Deshaun Watson, because I think it would just really, I think it would send this team at least to a playoff spot immediately. But I think it's going to be Teddy. It's just my hunch. It's been my hunch for at least a month now. I just don't think they're going to. Let me start that over. Joe Person said that they're willing to pay a hefty price for Deshaun Watson, but how hefty is too hefty? Are you going to give up McCaffrey? I don't think they should. Are you going to give up Brian Burns? I think that'd be a huge mistake to give up Brian Burns over anybody. I think he's like the most untouchable player on the team.
Burns and Chin are 1 and 2 for me.
100%. You can't trade either of those guys. And especially if you move on from Burns, who's going to rush the passer?
Exactly.
Like you have Burns right now, the attention's going to go to him, so that's going to increase the development of Gross Matos even quicker. And then you have in the middle, you have Derek Brown, and they said they're interested in bringing KK Short back at a lower price tag. If he can stay healthy, that's a very good front four. But back to your question, I think Teddy's going to be the guy, unfortunately, and I think they should put some heat on him by drafting a quarterback at 8 if they don't make a trade, whether that's Justin Fields or Trey Lance.
Could you see them trading up for a Wilson or Lawrence?
I don't think Jacksonville's trading out of that spot.
But this Zach Wilson buzz has gotten out of control. I'm actually here at BYU. I'm a huge Zach Wilson fan, and this buzz is out of control.
Well, the problem is the Jets have the second pick, right?
Yes.
Well, the Jets could say that they're going to keep Darnold.
Exactly.
Right, and go forward. And they need a lot on that roster. As a guy from New York, I know that roster well, and they need a lot. And I don't think Darnold's gotten a fair chance yet, especially with Adam Gase as head coach. And that whole organization was a mess. But I don't think Jacksonville trades out of that pick. The Jets could, but what are you going to give up to move up from 8th to 2? That's going to be another hefty price tag.
Yeah, if you miss out on, because I feel like Tepper's kind of bullish on us getting a new quarterback. It feels like.
I think so too, and I love that. I love that mindset of his.
And that's why I just believe Teddy's gone. I'm just worried we're going to force a pick like Mac Jones.
I don't know what the hype is about Mac Jones.
I don't either.
When was the last time an Alabama quarterback had a successful NFL career?
You could say that about Ohio State as well.
You could say that about Ohio State. And I know that doesn't mean anything about who Mac Jones or Justin Fields are. But I just, like, he had crazy, like, he had Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith and a great offensive line and great players in the backfield. I mean, it's not a knock to him, but how could you not succeed in that system if you're Mac Jones?
Exactly. And Trey Lance, I'll be honest, I have no idea if he's good or not. I don't watch FCS football.
Neither do I.
I'm not John Ellis watching tape every day.
I mean, but Carson Wentz, I mean, he was a high FCS pick, and he was good until he broke down.
That's another thing that worries me is wanting a big, strong quarterback. We saw that with Cam. These guys get hurt, and you guys mentioned it actually in your podcast. We got to fix the left tackle.
Yes, that's the first. I think that's the most important thing. And Ian Rappaport said that the Panthers are expected to place a franchise tag on Taylor Moton, which I think is the first move that they should make. Like the first order of business is keeping Taylor Moton on that line, and then fixing the left tackle position. I mean, I don't know if Trent Scott could be the starter. He might be. He's the only left tackle you have on the roster right now. So if you yeah, I agree. Left tackle, they have to do something about that position. That's so important.
Because that has just been murdering our quarterbacks over the years.
Yeah, and no matter how good your quarterback is, you have to protect him. I mean, look what happened in the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes. The guy's the greatest quarterback in the league, and he's running for his life. I mean, he looked very human that day.
So what rookie, if we do draft a rookie, which one would you want to see? Realistically, let's take Trevor Lawrence out of it. Assuming you have to give up quite a bit for Zach Wilson, who would you like to see?
I personally, I like Fields. I think Fields would be a great guy to bring in. He looked really good in the semifinal and the final. Ohio State came up short. I like Fields a lot based on the very limited tape that I've watched. But if they don't go with Fields, maybe like a Patrick Surtain, because they need cornerback help too. So those are two guys I could see them bringing in, but I would prefer Fields because I think that would give Bridgewater some immediate pressure. That's who I like.
So no Trey Lance.
I don't know enough about him, like you said. So
let me ask you this: would you take Justin Fields or Sam Darnold?
I would probably. Are we trading up for Fields?
No.
Well, I would take Fields then because you're not going to have to give up anything for him. I think a change of scenery. I think a change of scenery.
How much do you think Sam Darnold would go for?
A mid-round pick at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to get too much from him if you're the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are going to take a quarterback or two, I would move Darnold as soon as I could. And I don't think they would cost him much. And I think Darnold, I think he needs a change of scenery. I think a change of scenery would do him real well.
So let's say we give up a mid-round pick. We still have that first pick, and so basically I'm asking, would you take Surtain and Darnold or Fields? Because that's what it comes down to.
I think if you're trading for Sam Darnold, you're not taking a quarterback at 8.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think Surtain would probably be a good pick there, and then see what you can get for Bridgewater. And I think Joe Person said that the 49ers have called about Bridgewater. So if they really want to move on from Jimmy G and take on Bridgewater, like I don't know why you would make that move. Maybe to save some money, but I think Darnold and Surtain would be pretty nice.
If you're the 49ers listening to this, please, for everything, take Teddy Bridgewater off our hands. Every late game situation, you just knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, he came up short a lot down the stretch last year. Like the pick against the Raiders, the pick against the Bears, I believe
that was the worst one.
But the pick against Atlanta on that Thursday night, and it wasn't a late game situation, but that fumble on the goal line in Green Bay, I mean, those were just devastating mistakes.
It's just time and time again, and you just had no hope.
No, you just like, as I said, I'm an optimist, so I was like, oh, maybe they'll pull this one out because they were in every game. And aside from trying to have Joey Sly kick one from 85 yards out twice, against Kansas City and New Orleans, I mean, the ball was in Teddy's hands and he didn't come through. So I see the frustrations and I understand the frustrations from Panthers fans. So listen, it's just my hunch that Bridgewater is going to be the quarterback. I could be wrong, but I think you are not the only one here that wants to see Bridgewater elsewhere in 2021.
What about Curtis Samuel? What happens to him?
I think he's gone, unfortunately. I like Curtis a lot. I think his play developed a lot this past year just because McCaffrey missed so much time. They were able to use him in that role, that hybrid running back, slot receiver kind of guy. And once you get the ball in his hands, he could do a lot with it. So my hunch is that he's going to get paid on the open market, especially now that you're going to bring back Taylor Moton most likely. I think you had to choose between the two, and I think Moton, choosing Moton was probably the right move. But I think Curtis is going to be playing elsewhere.
Could you see Curtis in Jacksonville with Urban Meyer?
Absolutely, 100%. I think that could be a very legit possibility.
I feel like that just makes too much sense.
It makes it. It's his old college coach, and then you have
cap space for days.
You have so much cap space. So I think that's a big fit. And I could also see him returning home. I can also see him go because he's a Brooklyn guy. I could see him going to the Jets. Some people, I think Pro Football Focus had him tied to the Giants, who I'm a fan of, but they're in cap hell thanks to Dave Gettleman. And I don't see him going there, but Jacksonville will probably be number one spot for him. And I would think the Jets would be a close second.
So you're in Charlotte. You're from New York. Who do you pull for?
I'm a Giant fan. I'll be a Giant fan until the day I die. I mean, I was 6 years old, and my grandmother died, and and it was during the Week 4 game against Dallas, and my dad sat me in front of the TV and said, "Let's just watch the Giants today." And it developed into a routine. Like every Sunday, it was me and him in front of the game, in front of the TV, watching the Giants, and they win the Super Bowl that year. So I said, "Wow, it's going to happen every year. It's going to be great." 17 years later, they win another one. But I root for the Panthers to succeed. I guess I could say I turn into a Panthers fan.
Is it hard to just like root for this team? Like you have you do have a connection to because you're in Charlotte and whatnot. But is it hard to like really immerse yourself into these teams?
No, it's been easy for me, and maybe it's because the Giants and the Knicks have stunk. But they're always going to be my first love. But I enjoy seeing the teams in the city succeed. You don't want to be around a bunch of losers. I mean, I grew up watching the Knicks and the Jets in New York, and it's not good when these teams lose. And I was actually at the game a few years ago on the field when Graham Gano hit that field goal to beat the Giants. And I was sitting around and I'm like, oh, this stinks, but it's kind of cool. Like, just because I've seen that movie so many times, tying a game late.
I was at a Jets game. Andrew Luck was playing Monday night. one of the most depressing games I've ever been to. Jets fans were just laughing at themselves.
But yeah, the first ever football game I saw, I was 5 years old, was the Niners and the Jets in 1989. Niners ended up winning the Super Bowl that year, but it was just, I remember being like, this is okay. And then the last Jet game I went to was Peyton Manning was a Colt, and it was just depressed city.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually, no, excuse me. The last Jet game I saw was in 2011 when the Giants played him, and the Jets were going in the right direction. The Giants were going in the wrong direction. Giants smoked them that day, and then they went opposite ways. Giants won the Super Bowl, and the Jets missed the playoffs.
Okay, so you said you're a Knicks fan. If you had to choose Hornets or Knicks making the playoffs, because it's probably going to end up turning into that, who are you taking?
I think the Knicks are going to make it. I like Tibbs this year.
He's so good.
Emmanuel Quickly. If it wasn't for LaMelo, Emmanuel Quickly, I think, would be the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. Julius Randle has really turned himself into a hell of a player. Derrick Rose has been great since he's come over.
RJ Barrett's up and down.
RJ Barrett's up and down. I see the Duke flag behind you. I'm a Carolina fan myself. But, I think they are going to make it. I think they're both going to make it, but I would lean more toward the Knicks making it if I had to make a pick.
But also let's go to the Giants. What do you want the Giants to do this offseason?
Fire Dave Gettleman.
Hey, we were preaching that in Carolina for years.
Listen, I just got triggered a little bit. I think when they decided to bring him back, I was like, why? What is the purpose of this? Like, his first head coach hire was Pat Shurmur. That didn't work out. He traded 2 picks for Leonard Williams, who was going to be a free agent anyway. You weren't going to make the playoffs. Why are you trading those picks? They brought in Nate Solder at left tackle, who has not worked out. He opted out last year for COVID. He signed Mike Remmers at right tackle. I mean, you saw firsthand what happened to Mike Remmers in Super Bowl 50.
And this year.
He said he signed Odell Beckham to that extension. And he said, we didn't sign him to trade him. They trade him. They bring in his replacement, Golden Tate, who they just released. I mean, it's just been a mess. And I like Daniel Jones. He's a Charlotte guy. But at 6th overall, I thought that was a bad pick. Like, they needed so much more than quarterback. They could have got him later in the first round. They had 3 first-round picks. They could have traded up, to get him later in the round if they wanted. He's been a disaster as far as I'm concerned in New York, and I think every Giant fan will tell you the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So, were you a Daniel Jones guy or a Dwayne Haskins, or neither? Neither.
I didn't want Haskins. I didn't really necessarily want Jones because 20 years prior they drafted a quarterback out of Duke and Dave Brown in the first round. That didn't work, and I had terrible flashbacks of that. And it's just.
I'll tell you what, Duke's not the best football program.
No, they're not. Great basketball program, as much as it pains me to say, but
not this year either.
No, not this year. But yeah, I wasn't comfortable with either.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you expect the Giants to be next year? Bottom of the league, or?
I expect them to be maybe 500. I mean, 6-10 this year, they almost won the whole division, which is stupid to think about. But I think maybe with a full training camp, a full off season, full practice at the roster as constructed, I think could be 500, which could be enough to win that division next year. If Dak Prescott doesn't come back to Dallas, which I believe he will. But I will say, go back to Gettleman thing. One signing that it was a complete home run was James Bradbury. And that was a guy I thought the Carolina should have brought back last year. Like, that was the one guy, just keep Bradbury. And he had an unbelievable season with the Giants.
We learned our lesson with Josh Norman, and then we go and do the same thing with James Bradbury.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if Bradbury was as good as Norman was, but he's like, go back to last year. He had to cover Mike Evans twice, Julio Jones twice, Michael Thomas twice. He had a game against Devontae Adams. And there was never an issue.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a good corner and such an underrated corner. I thought they should have kept him, but that's one signing that Dave Gettleman has made in New York that's worked out.
So next year with the Giants, so you see them winning the division?
No. I don't think so. It depends on who Washington brings in as quarterback.
Cam Newton.
Oh yeah. Have you watched? Have you seen the I Am Athlete with him?
I have not.
It's so good. They're asking him if they think he's one of the top quarterbacks of the league. He says, "I'm not one of the worst 32." He is. I think post-COVID Cam was rough. I mean, right? But
Post-COVID Cam was one of the worst 30.
it was awful. I hated to see it because I became such a fan of his when I moved down here. But pre-COVID, that night in Seattle, he almost damn near won that game diving for the goal line. That was a great night for Cam. So I think if he comes back healthy, I think he's not going to be the MVP Cam, but he could be pretty damn good Cam. So if Washington brings him in, I think that could be a nice little relationship there.
Yeah, I just don't see him ever being healthy again.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
It's hard to see.
It is hard to see, but I root for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if Washington will bring him in because they had a chance to do it last year and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
All right. So my last question, I want to ask you, since you're a Giants fan, last year, the final game of the regular season, that Sunday night, what was your thoughts on basically the Eagles throwing that game?
Immediate anger. I mean, but then you take a step back and you're like, all right, they finished 6-10. They almost blew that game against Dallas earlier in the day. Wayne Gallman almost fumbled it away, just trying to run a timeout. But you bring in Sudfeld and it was immediate anger, but it's like, okay, you're 6-10. You don't deserve to be in that conversation anyway.
Yeah. But,
going back a few weeks prior, I think Jason Kelsey in a press conference was saying, like, we practice all week. We play to win games. Because I don't care how bad your record is. This is not verbatim, but it was that came to mind immediately. So I was like, what are the Eagles doing here? Mm-hmm. And even after the game, I think Jalen Hurts in his press conference looked a little reserved about how he felt about what happened. So it was immediate anger, but 6-10, they don't deserve to be there anyway. And then Doug Peterson gets fired anyway. So there's more anger at Doug Peterson, but it's over now.
Yeah. And hey, you get a better draft pick.
Yeah. I'm never for that. I want to win as much as I can.
Yeah, but
I don't think they would have beaten the Bucs the following week anyway.
Well, as a Panthers fan, I was cheering for some losses at the end of the season.
Yeah. How about that game where they won in Green Bay?
What do you mean?
Oh, not Green Bay.
The Washington.
Yeah, the Washington. Like, a lot of people hated it.
It's just obviously you can't tell these guys, hey, go out there and lose. I mean, it's not basketball. You can't just throw your G League team out there.
Right.
But man, I was so mad because you go from 3-4 to 8. That's such a jump.
Yeah, it is a huge jump. But your pick at 3 or 4 is never a guarantee. Yeah. Look at Jamarcus Russell. Look at Ryan Leaf. I mean, look at some of those other guys that have not done well at that position. But I agree. It's a better chance to hit a home run with that pick.
And I'm glad it wasn't a 1-15 season because that just teaches losing to these guys. You see with like the Sixers, it just feels like the Sixers are never going to get over that hump. They tank for years and years to the whole process thing. And then it just feels like these guys are just developed to be losers at that point because they're never expected to win until, all right, now you're expected to win out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a different culture because you look at what the Houston Astros did. Mm-hmm. The players that they had when they were, losing 100 games a season were not going to be the players that were going to be playing in a few years anyway. So I think in baseball, it's kind of different because you can develop those players, in AAA, AA, single A. You can't do that. You can't do that in the NFL.
Yeah, and also with the NBA too. You have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons this first years. Like they're just expected not to do anything, and that's what they're taught. And so you see this with the Panthers. I wouldn't want guys like Chin and Burns to be taught like that. No,
I think that really sets your team back. And I think what Matt Rule is doing this year and going forward is trying to put in a winning culture here and a positive attitude. And I think the players are starting to buy into that.
Last question. It's kind of early with him. Obviously, we don't really know yet, but are you a fan of Matt Rule?
I am. I think, the whole college coach translated to the NFL, it doesn't always work out, but I think it's working out with him. I think the players really buy into it. Bringing in Teddy, I don't know why they wanted to bring in Teddy. Like they were dead set on it, him and Joe Brady, as soon as they got in. But, it is that move is done. You can't change it now, but I like Matt Rule a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think going forward, he's just going to continue to develop this culture and this winning attitude. And I think Carolina takes a step forward next year. 1 year of NFL experience under all their belts for the whole staff. And now they'll actually have, rookie OTAs and maybe OTAs and training camp just to develop the chemistry even further. I don't know how the roster is going to look, next week or even in a few months, but I think the division is going to be right for the taking pretty soon because, how many more years does Tom Brady have? I mean,
just don't ask that question.
He's
it could go 20.
He's seemingly never going to retire, right? So let's say he's got 2 years left. The Saints don't have a quarterback now, or that we don't know who's going to be their quarterback, and the Falcons are the Falcons. So I think Carolina's division is going to be right for the taking pretty soon, and I think Matt Rule's the right guy to put him in that position.
All right, well, Kevin, thanks for coming on. Everyone, go check out the Crown Score podcast anywhere you listen to your podcast. Kevin, thanks again.
Carter, thanks for having me, buddy.
Of course.